Morning everybody, and welcome to the General Conference and our Loop panel on how to craft an effective blog. My name is Kate Hawkins. I'm a member of the ECPR communications team. I work at ECPR headquarters in Colchester in the east of England, but I'm speaking to you today from the General Conference in Innsbruck. I'm joined this morning by the Loop's academic co-editor, Martin Bull, who is Associate Dean for Research and Innovation and Professor of Politics at the University of Salford in the UK. We were hoping to be joined today by our other academic co-editor, Johanna Doli-Saltness, who lives currently in Brasilia, where it is 5:30 a.m. And she has some childcare issues, so she won't be joining us. Well, she may turn up, we don't know, but anyway, we're gonna see how we get on without her. Also joining us is my colleague Kais Condon, who is based at ECPR HQ in Colchester. Later on in this presentation, we're going to be joined by two of the Loop's regular contributors, Hager Ali, who is from the German Institute for Global and Area Studies, and Ruairidh Brown of Forward College in Lisbon in Portugal. And they're going to be talking about their experiences of working with us over the past couple of years and offering some valuable advice for would-be blog writers. We're going to start with a short presentation from me, sharing insider tips for turning your academic research into a catchy blog piece. Then we'll move on to the interview with Hager and Ruairidh, and in the final section, we're going to open the floor to questions from you. Hannah, I've already mentioned, she is collaborating, as I said, is at Salford, and then there's Kais and myself at ECPR's Colchester HQ. There's a little bit about our backgrounds there. Martin and Johanna deal with the academic edit side of things, and Kais and myself are dealing with the sub-editing and the production and picture research and all that kind of thing. So, why blog? Today's media environment tends to demand simplified, reductionist arguments. This can risk curbing the propagation of analytical scientific research, but it also opens up opportunities for the unique format of academic blogs, and that's where the Loop contributes with innovative analyses. Blogs have an accessible, shorter format, swift turnaround time, and potential reach beyond academe. All this makes blogging an important part of a contemporary scholar's research profile. Launched in autumn 2020, the Loop disseminates cutting-edge political science articles, realising greater levels of influence for academics in government and public life. Publishing with the Loop can spark debate on topics of global importance. It can also help you build up valuable citations by boosting traffic back to your academic research in books and journal articles. Tips that follow are intended to help you submit by the Loop editorial team. If you don't follow our guidance, we'll probably still be able to publish your blog piece, but be prepared for a hard edit. This may come as quite a shock if you have submitted only to academic journals in the past. Before you pitch or submit, do read and absorb our 20 golden rules for authors. You can find them under the Write for the Loop tab. We also strongly recommend you browse through some previously published blogs to get a general feel for the Loop's structure and house style. Follow our straightforward instructions and your blog piece will sail through production to publication. Our simple online pitch form, also under Write for the Loop, asks you to explain to us, as compellingly as you can, why your blog idea is interesting, important, or relevant. The pitch form has a 150-word limit. Make those words count. For production purposes, please also tell us how soon you can deliver. Lots of academics submitting via our pitch form just paste in an abstract of their academic article, but this isn't really ideal. So if you have a rough idea of your blog structure, sketch out your argument and tell us why it's important. On the Loop, we have a strict maximum of 1,000 words per blog. This doesn't include tables, figures, captions, or pull quotes. If your running copy comes in at more than 1,000 words, we'll return it to you for cutting back. This, I'm afraid, is non-negotiable. Write your blog piece with a wide audience in mind and think how they, rather than your academic colleagues, will receive it. Would your text be comprehensible and interesting to a well-informed or educated reader of a quality newspaper? Remember, the loop is fully open access and not everyone reading your blog will be an academic, and that's good. So limit your use of academic jargon and keep your tone conversational. Craft your title so the subject of your blog is perfectly clear. Unlike academic articles, single-deck titles without a cryptic introduction tend to work better. We get a lot of submissions with question titles. If the question is genuine, i.e. the answer is not obvious, we tend to keep it. But we try to avoid rhetorical questions to which the answer is almost invariably no. You're probably well used to writing academic paper titles, which typically have a two-deck structure, so an intriguing or ambiguous first deck and an explanatory second deck. But if you can, resist the temptation to do this when you blog. Search engines will find it far easier to find your blog if the key phrase is in the title itself. Don't make readers wade through great screeds of text to find out exactly what you're writing about. Hook them in from the get-go. Avoid using technical terms, especially in your title. This part of your blog piece, at very least, should be understandable by academic and lay readers alike. For search engine optimization, get the keywords or phrases on which people are likely to search into your title or stand first, and repeat them elsewhere throughout the piece. In contrast with academic journal article structure, start with the main outcomes, then flesh them out. You might want to return to the main point in your final sentence. On the loop, we introduce our blog pieces with a stand first or sell, some people call this a kicker, I think, especially in the States, of around 50 words. The stand first should set out your theme boldly, yet be open-ended enough to entice the reader through to the main text. In a 1,000-word blog, include at least 3 or 4 crossheads to break up running copy. Our software has a limit of 300 continuous words without a crosshead, so be prepared for us to introduce more of our own if your text doesn't meet this criterion. For paragraphs, the maximum length is 150 words. However, a slab of text this long looks huge on screen. In practice, you should keep most of your blog paragraphs to no more than 2 or 3 sentences, each dealing with a single idea. Readers' attention spans are far shorter on screen than they are on paper. Online, readers tend to scan copy and cherry-pick key phrases. To appease casual readers looking for only the key takeaways, the loop will pick out around 3 standalone pull quotes in a bigger font, featuring your blog's most salient points. For space reasons, these may be truncated versions of what appears in running copy. The loop's readability software allows for no more than 25% of sentences longer than 20 words in each article. In most of the raw text blog pieces we receive, more than 45% of sentences are longer than 20 words, so we have our work cut out. If you can split long sentences into 2 or even 3, please do. We realise that if you are accustomed to writing for academic publications, very long sentences with lots of subordinate clauses will be the norm. So if you think you might struggle to write in a more informal journalistic style, Google readability software for Word and you'll find websites on which you can paste in your... Please don't simply summarise your research article in 1,000 words. Your blog should be a standalone piece, understandable without references to other research. If your reader is interested, they'll click the links to find out more. You may have written an outstanding journal article which you're sure fellow political scientists will want to read. But that doesn't mean you should try and retain that quality by simply producing an academic summary of the article for your blog. Try and write the blog as a standalone piece. Readers shouldn't need to click through your links to understand what the blog is saying. Your blog's readers are not, at that moment in time, interested in what you've argued elsewhere. They want to know what you're arguing here, so argue it. We understand it might be hard for you to write in a way that limits nuance, balance, doubt, and justification, but try it and enjoy it. It's not an assault on your academic integrity. The loop is not trying to dumb down your research, but to explain it clearly and concisely, and to encourage further reading. You might think you've written the perfect academic account of your subject matter, condensed into 1,000 words, but the loop is not an academic journal and its remit is entirely different. So our editorial team will edit your blog with that remit in mind. We recognise that at times it is difficult and uncomfortable for academics to write in a way that removes, to a large degree, balance, nuance, doubt. You're writing with a different remit in mind of ensuring that your blog conveys your message or the original research at the root of your blog in the most engaging manner possible. On first academic edit, that's before your piece goes into the WordPress workflow system, your blog will probably come back covered in red ink, but please don't take offence. Our team reads, edits, and publishes roughly one blog each working day, sometimes more. We have a good sense of what works and what doesn't. Publish with us and you'll see. Here's a visual representation of the journey your copy will take to publication. Blogs arrive in one of two ways, either via our secure online pitch form, so coming to us organically, or via commission by one of our two academic editors. Once we receive a blog, it is claimed by one of the academic editors. They will perform a first edit in Word and return it to the author with the changes tracked. Authors then add any further amendments of their own in line with academic editor feedback and then email the revised Word file back to us. Very occasionally, we might repeat this step. The piece then passes to production for upload into the Loop's WordPress website. Kayas and myself perform the necessary picture research and give your blog a sub-edit in line with house style and readability. We insert additional crossheads if necessary and pick out the pull quotes, as I mentioned before. We test all hyperlinks and assign your blog categories and tags so that people can find it when they're navigating through the website. When we have finished, we click Submit to Workflow. This generates an email to the author with a link to go in and check their piece. The author can make any further edits they wish. They then hit Sign Off to pass it back to the Loop for our final pre-publication checks. Now the piece goes to the second academic editor, the one who hasn't yet seen it, for a final sense check. Any further academic queries we will raise with the author, though these are generally very minor at this late stage. When the second academic editor is satisfied, they sign off. The blog is now ready to publish. The Loop can't include academic style footnotes, but do insert as many hyperlinks to relevant sources as you like. Don't say, click here to find out. Simply hyperlink the relevant word or phrase in your running copy. Avoid using scientific references. Put all sources and references as hyperlinked text. If your blog is based on research published in an academic journal, make sure we know about it. Remember to link back to the original research in running text. We can also include a hyperlinked reference at the bottom of your blog detailing the title of your research article in full. Does the journal in which you published have a dedicated Twitter account? Let us know and we'll tag it once your Loop blog is published. It doesn't matter if some hyperlinks are behind a paywall or in a language other than English, though do try to have some open source references so readers don't get too frustrated. The Loop has now built up a significant back catalogue, so have a search by keyword on the main themes of your own blog piece. If you can link back to an existing blog on our own site, even better. If English isn't your mother tongue and you don't speak it fluently, your blog may require considerable Englishing by the Loop editors to get it into publishable shape. Before you submit, please ask a native English speaker to check through your copy to ensure it is written in natural, idiomatic style. You don't have to have a Twitter account to publish on the Loop, but it really does help. As soon as your blog is published, we'll tweet a link to our 3,000 followers, and we'll also retweet on the ECPR's main account, which has around 26,000 followers. If you have a personal Twitter account that's used for professional purposes, please share your piece widely. And if you're sharing via other social media platforms, do let us know so we can give the heads up to our ECPR colleagues. We'll give your blog a pictorial feature in our fortnightly Loop Digest to around 11,000 subscribers on ECPR's publications email distribution list. Please check your subscriptions via My ECPR to ensure you are signed up to this distribution group. Start spreading the news. You've done the hard bit. Now make sure your blog gets read. Tell your university department you're publishing with us. You may get featured in departmental newsletters and the like. Alert the people who run social media accounts of research groups to which you belong. Ahead of publication, let the Loop know of any Twitter accounts you'd like tagging to gain additional traction after your blog piece goes live. The Loop is a fully open source blog. We believe in the free flow of information. All our articles can be republished for free, online or in print, under a Creative Commons license. If you can think of platforms for cross-postings on which your blog post might be published again to reach another readership, contact that site directly or let us know and we'll get in touch. On each published blog piece, there's a square button to make it easy for those who want to publish elsewhere, with reference to the Loop as an original source. As soon as your blog goes live, you will receive an auto-generated message from WordPress alerting you to the fact. Also in this email is a link to a very short survey asking you about your editorial experience with the Loop. All responses are anonymous. We are proud to say that the vast majority of our authors say they would be happy to work with us again. And for the first half of 2022, we have a 100% record. 98% of authors were either very satisfied or satisfied with the quality of editing, and 96% either very satisfied or satisfied with the speed of publication. We can generally bring your pieces to publication within 3 days of you submitting copy, but if your piece deals with something that's extremely time sensitive, we can turn it around as quickly as 24 hours after copy delivery, or sometimes even quicker than that. So we're a small team and we're very nimble. And just a note on volume, we've got over 500 authors on our books now, and since we launched in October of 2020, we've published 421 articles. So that's the end of our presentation, which brings us to the next stage in this panel, which is to bring in Hager and Ruairidh and to ask them a few questions about their experiences working with us. So welcome to you both, Hager and Ruairidh.
Thanks very much, Kate. I've done this, we've done different versions of this panel over the last couple of years, and I imagine that Hager and Ruairidh are probably thinking like I was last year, that after Kate's finished, what on earth can I say? Because Kate's presentation is so comprehensive and illustrative. I've noted down various things that of the things she's mentioned, which are so accurate, and examples that I have in my role as editor, many examples of which I won't comment on, but just to say that that's I think for first time blogging a wonderful introduction. However, that doesn't mean to say that we haven't got more to say, because I suppose what I want to say is, why have we asked Ruairidh and Hager along? In the past couple of years, we've done sessions really run by the editorial team, in which we've had a different approach, different theme, introductions to the loop, and so on and so forth. And this year, we discussed at some length in the team how those have gone and what we should do this year. And I think the consensus was that it was a little bit too, let's call it top down. That is to say, our ideas, our views, and so on and so forth. And you can see very clearly that Kate's presentation, which represents this combination of academic, editorial, and production approach to the loop, is we're very clear in what we're doing and what makes a good blog, and so on and so forth. We're clear. But what we felt this time is that actually, why don't we invite some blog writers along, so that they can talk about both blog writing and maybe talk about us and you know, maybe our limitations, or what we get right and what we get wrong, as a means of conveying to you, the audience, some better lessons, let's say, that we can provide from a top-down perspective. So we chose Ruairidh and we chose Hager, both for good reasons, because their blogs that have come in, and I think Ruairidh numerically tops the list in terms of number of blogs by an individual published with us. But Hager, on the other hand, has also spontaneously proposed to us and launched a blog series, Autocracies with Adjectives. But beyond that, we felt in amongst, and this is no disrespect to anybody else, because we have a number of really good blogs, but we felt that consistently over time, both Ruairidh and Hager displayed the qualities needed to write really excellent blogs. All those issues that Kate has alluded to in that presentation, Ruairidh and Hager seem to meet all of them. Their blogs don't need much editing. They seem to grasp the essentials, and so we chose them, and happily they both accepted. So I want to start really by asking each of you in turn, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourselves, your research, and how and why you came into blogging, and maybe how much time do you devote to blogging in your working life, you know, in the course of an academic year. How does this feature in your life? Because one of the things we want to do, the Loop editorial team, is to get across the message that this isn't a kind of, or shouldn't be an optional extra. This should be integrated into the career of young academics. So perhaps starting with you, Hager, say something about yourself, how and why you came into blogging, and what sort of, how does it feature in your working life? Thanks.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Martin, for all the praise. It's a great start into the day for me. So everyone, my name is Hager. I'm a researcher at the Giga Institute in Hamburg, a doctoral candidate at the University of Hamburg, and also a freelance journalist. And my research is actually what brought me to blogging. So I'm writing a dissertation in the format of a monograph, and my topic is civil-military relations and regime stability in the Middle East. And we all know Middle East military, there's a lot of stuff happening all the time, everywhere. So the topics, there's a lot of developments that are happening while I'm working on a monograph. But in my position as a researcher at a think tank and also someone writing a monograph, I don't always have the time and capacity to devote to full-on journal papers, even though they're really important for publications in my careers. At the same time, it's still a topic I can't just sit on it until I finish my monograph. So what can I do that is somewhere in between a journal paper and a monograph that kind of keeps me in the game, maybe? That also forces, it works like a commitment device as well, that keeps me focused on real life events while I also work on, more the conceptual stuff, the dissertation, the analysis heavy things. And that's actually what brought me into blogging. So using the topics of my blogs, you can actually follow what I've been working on in my dissertation. So maybe I've been working on a chapter about Tunisia, so you'll find a blog about that. Maybe you'll find me working on a section about military coups, and there will be a blog for it.
Thank you very much, Hager. Rory?
Hi. Thank you also, Martin, for that very kind introduction. Well, I'm Ruairidh. I'm an assistant professor at Forward College in Lisbon. Previous to this, I worked in China for 4 years for the University of Nottingham. I first got into academic blogging. Actually, it was some of my colleagues at Nottingham recommended it as a way for a young academic to first gain traction, because the academic writing takes a long time, peer review. So a way to kind of get traction and get your ideas out quickly, they said, was to go into academic blogging and build that up as very important for a young academic. To be honest, since there, I've really done a lot of academic blogging because I really enjoy it, to be honest. I mean, it's great to get sort of ideas out there and see them, reach the public quicker than they would through the normal channels. But to be honest, I really enjoy the writing style and the kind of quick turnaround and the ability to share ideas in a more conversational way. So, I mean, yes, it's hugely important for a young academic, but also I can't stress how much it is enjoyable writing in this way. And I would say I mean, it of course varies depending on workload, but normally I like to try and maybe every 2 months try and think or write a piece just to keep that engagement. And also, I mean, I can't stress how much as well it helps develop your writing style. Writing these short, snappy pieces, it's really, I can see my writing has quality has increased a lot since doing this. So for that in itself, I would really encourage academic blogging.
Thanks, Rory and Hager. Yeah, I think that point about the writing style is, I mean, I can speak myself as a blog writer, that it does force you to think and write in a different way, which then becomes extremely useful when you move back to writing longer pieces. I agree with you entirely. The other point I make about blog writing is that curiously, I've found it that there's an analogy with teaching, or at least when you teach, let's say, when you design and research and teach a course for the first time, or a module for the first time. I'm sure that everybody here has experienced that incredible crystallization of ideas that to some extent, when you're, even if it's, say, really relevant to your research field, that often you're too deeply in the wood as such to see the forest as a whole. And when you have to explain something to, let's say, undergraduates, it requires a different process, which you then find lends you an incredible clarity that you hadn't seen before, let's say. I find a similar process happens with blog writing, where I sit back and I write about something, let's say in my field, Italian politics. And I realized that in writing the blog and in having to write something within 1,000 words, it brings a clarity to me that I hadn't been aware of before. So I think you're both actually spot on. Both of you have written, as I said before, several pieces for the Loop. Can you tell us what, in your view, makes a good idea for a blog? Because I think what we've experienced with those, a lot of people who have, we've discussed blogging with, is that they don't know where to start or what do they do? So do your ideas normally come directly from your research, or do they come from some kind of events happening in the world, or is it somehow both combined? What is it about, not about the writing, but about the idea for a blog? Because after all, even if you're good at writing a blog, if you haven't got an idea for one, there's nowhere to go. It's the starting point. Rory, let's start with you this time.
Thank you. I think it's a hybrid between your own research and what's going on with current events. We need the research background because it gives us the expertise, and gives us the authority to give this perspective. But I think what makes a really good blog post is one that then can take this and speak to contemporary events. So I think for me, the real art in coming up with an idea and pitching a blog post is thinking how aspects of my research can give a perspective or can speak to something that's going on in contemporary politics. To give an example for illustration, my last piece was relating some ideas of Thomas Hobbes and the Scottish Civil War to contemporary Scottish politics. And I had for a long time wanted to write a blog post on Thomas Hobbes in relation to Scotland. And I kind of had that idea and I kind of had it there in a box, and I waited for the opportunity to come up. And then, when there was a talk of the next Scottish independence referendum and Conservative Party saying they wouldn't allow it, I was like, oh, here's something which my research here can really speak to. So I think it's having that research ideas and thinking of an opportunity of when to apply when it comes up. I also wanted to just build on that, what you were saying, Martin, about the teaching as well. I think that's very, very true. And I think, a lot of our research when we're designing and teaching modules isn't just, for publications, it's also for teaching. And we do a lot of research for our teaching. And I think sometimes that can really make a good blog post. When I was teaching this year, I had one student who was going to write their exam paper on St. Augustine. And, I spent these many, many hours with this one student on St. Augustine. And I was like, what can I do with this research beyond, helping a student who did pass their exam? And then I thought, well, it'd make a great blog post. And I thought, oh, it connects quite a bit to recent discussions about the Anthropocene, so I'll apply it to that. So taking that knowledge I gained from the research and applying it to a situation where it came up in current affairs.
Thanks, Rory. Great to hear where those last two blogs came from. Yeah. Hager.
Yeah, so for me, I have two approaches depending on whether it was a standalone blog piece or the inaugural piece for the Autocracy with Adjectives series. So for me, for the standalone blog, I would recommend a good way to start is with a question always. Like, what is a question that you see that comes up when you observe a real life event that you would like to answer? Because 1,000 words in a blog post, they're really enough to make one concise argument, to answer one question. And without a question, and I always notice this whenever I write, if I don't start with a question, fitting a topic into 1,000 words will be incredibly hard, because it is eventually what will give your blog a lot of direction. So that would be, I think, my general recommendation for standalone blog pieces. For me, I like to use this format a lot for real world events and current developments that would otherwise get lost in academic publishing, because as we all know, there's a lag in academic publishing, you know, until everything has gone through the peer review process. So there are a lot of finer but really important developments in the real world that we cannot quite capture in research papers, because the turnaround isn't fast enough for that, and because of the way that academic papers are structured, they don't leave you a lot of nuance to even cover these, unless it's like a very big watershed moment. But sometimes the smaller events are just as important to show something you may be researching unfolding in real life. So for me, for example, a recurrent issue is party systems and party formations, which I like to show with my blog pieces on Libya and Tunisia, for example. We know in research that you know, party system volatility is a thing, and that's very important for stability. But sometimes it helps to have a very palpable example, and that's how I connected these topics for that. So that's for the standalone blog pieces. But for the series, I had a completely different approach. For me, it was, I mean, you all probably know this, everyone has a pet peeve topic, you know, that one research topic that whenever it's brought up will launch you straight into a lecture, into a rant. No matter where you are, you will be prepared with a TED Talk, and it will get you going. And for me, that happens to be the way that autocracies are studied. So fortunately, also my dissertation topic. But I felt that just going for an edited volume, or you know, the usual special issue wouldn't satisfy me and the anger, the pet peeve I have about that topic. And it's one of those things where I thought that the discussion is just as interesting, or maybe even more interesting, than the eventual end project. And I wanted to see an actual discussion unfold and see, you know, what are new topics that might come up. And I wanted to engage other researchers. And that's, in fact, what I'm doing in this series. I use this as a Trojan horse for a lot of questions to a lot of very interesting researchers, and pitched this to you guys, and saw what happened. And what is happening is an incredibly interesting discussion with a lot of topics. And yeah, it all started with that one pet peeve.
Thank you very much, Hager. And I'm really pleased that you mentioned also the blog series, because I think there is a kind of similar, as you've indicated, similar thought process that goes into the creation of a blog to the creation of a blog series. And indeed, I think if there's something we've managed to achieve at the Loop, it is a very innovative way of debating issues. I think our Science of Democracy blog series, which was our first series, where I think we're now at 60 contributions, something like that, is now known across the world, with all sorts of people talking about it. And we have other blog series on the go, including that of Hager. But that's extremely, I think, insightful for both of you in terms of the idea for a blog and how to encapsulate it. And it's true to say, in terms of, from our perspective, you know, looking at contributions, we tend to view contributions as falling into one of two types. Either it's expert comment, you know, from somebody who's done research in the field on a particular current event, or it's research, original research, which is then used to write a blog. Or it can be a combination of those two, as Ruairidh eloquently illustrated. Can I move on though and ask you a fairly blunt question, which is in a way the let's say the bane of our lives as editors of the Loop, because we'd like to see, one of the things we really like to see, we want to see both types of blogs. We love to see expert comment on current events, but at the same time we don't want to deprioritize in any way blogs which are based on original research. However, we do receive blogs which sometimes are too much like you know, a kind of micro summary of of a journal article. And really my question to you both is, what in your view is the difference between writing a journal article and writing a blog in terms of those processes? Is there something different? When you sit down and say, oh, today I'm going to write a blog as opposed to writing another chapter in my book or writing a journal article, is there something, can you capture the different process or thought process or writing process that you go through to get across this significant difference, simply because blog writing is not the same as journal article writing? Hager, to you first this time.
I have to say that for me, blog writing takes a different level of familiarity with the topic. I mean, a research paper has a very set structure that we've been learning since our undergrad. And we know that after the introduction should come a theory section or a literature review. And you should have the analysis and then interpretation and then a conclusion. You have a lot of, when you break journal writing down, it's a lot of, pre-fixed structures that you just somewhat suit and adapt to your own topic. And there isn't a lot of room for your own opinion unless marked otherwise. This is how you position yourself towards certain research. Whereas for a blog, I feel like you have to already have a lot of background knowledge on it, and you have to be able to summarize it at a moment's notice, a lot more than what you would have in a paper, because a blog doesn't leave room for a literature review. You don't have the full journey, the scenic route where you can take someone through the different parts of the literature that exists and the different debates that have gone on for years in academia. You don't have that for a blog. You have to hit the ground running and navigate it quickly to your argument, to the point. And to argue a perhaps also personal standpoint, I feel takes a different kind of confidence as well, I feel like. Because there are things that, as an academic, you can sometimes hedge, you can hide behind, oh, well, this study has existed in my field and this has happened in my field. But if it's just you in your blog, you don't have that sort of hedge behind which you can hide. You just have to write, and you need to be confident about that opinion. That I think is a very different, or it's a big difference that I've noticed over the year. It is being open about your opinion, of course, transparent about how you got there. You have to have a clear argument that, again, where you really can't hide behind a literature review and behind other research, and this big researcher said something and this bigger fish said something. It really is just you. You're the expert. Spotlight is on you only, and you alone. And for the first time, if you're writing a blog for the first time, that might be a little daunting.
Thank you, Hager. And Ruairidh?
I think to echo what Hager said, I think, again, there's this kind of unmediated essence to writing a blog where you're communicating directly to the audience in a way you don't with an academic journal. I think, an academic journal's very structured, and there's a lot of sort of signaling and protocol you have to go through when writing it. Whereas when you're writing a blog post, you can directly speak to your audience. And I think one way to think of it is maybe there's a lot more of a conversational aspect to a blog. It's much more like a conversation, and when you imagine how you're explaining to it, so you have to cut very quickly and get the reader's attention and explain why this is important and explain your idea, almost like you were trying to explain to someone on a bus your idea before the next stop. It's kind of like that to get that idea across. And to be honest, that's why I really like it, and I find it quite more enjoyable and quite liberating compared to normal or standard peer-reviewed writing, because there's that unmediated sense of a conversation. One thing I might add is, just in my experience, if there's anything comparable to writing a blog for me, and this may say strange, but it's when you write a book or a monograph, because in a monograph you have that more room for a conversational style, which I feel quite similar to a blog. So for anyone who's written a monograph, I find quite similarities there, certainly much more than in the peer-reviewed journal. But yeah, unmediated, kind of direct, and much more conversational. would be the approach I would take.
Thank you very much, both. Yeah, I mean, if I was to pull out two things from your comments, it is which really chime in my own. It's I often think that sometimes I even say this: writing a blog is almost like writing a journal article backwards. That may sound strange, but with a journal article, there's you build towards there's an expectation, a rising expectation. You've got your abstract, but you don't give away too much in that. And then you set out how you're going to do this. And of course, it is the research that must uncover the outcome, which you're going to reveal at the end in the conclusion. And a blog has to be done exactly the other way around, in a way. To hold the reader's attention, you have to start with the key arguments, and this is quite it's quite brutal, I think, for somebody writing that way round for the first time, because then think, well, how do I then incorporate? But it actually flows naturally from that. So I think that's the first. The second that comes out is this issue about nuance, which you spoke about, Hager, there, and there, I think, again, in my experience as editor, well, let's say, in my experience, first of all, as a blogger, I mean, I suppose long before the Loop, I was schooled in the blogging school of hard knocks, I think they would call it. And I acknowledge Laura Hood of The Conversation, because she has a very brutal editorial style. And when Kate said the first edit can be shocking, you know, the red ink, I still remember my first couple of blogs that Laura edited at The Conversation. You know, my jaw dropped when I saw what had been done to my, you know, my beautiful piece. But it is true that there isn't really room for nuance. It has to be knocked out of the piece. As Hager says, you have room for one argument. You need to make that argument and not worry about, on the one hand, on the other hand, you know, it could be argued that. No, you're going to argue it. You've got to argue the case, and you need courage, and you need some self-confidence. And in a way, I think you need that sort of sense of authority that actually you have done the research, you know the position, and you're willing to state this, and you know, if necessary, be challenged on it. But if there's one single thing that I think all the editorial team would agree on in terms of, let's say, pushback from authors, it's where you can't say that, or I don't want the title looking like that because it might suggest this, you know. Well, actually, that's what we want to suggest. We want to provoke, and your title isn't saying everything that you want to say, you know. So I think those things, straight to the argument and nuance. I love your analogy, Rory, of having to convince someone between bus stops. I think in the UK that could be fairly easy because buses generally don't run to time. Some of these journeys are very long, but I think it really captures the essence of it very, very well. Can I ask then, and Rory commented on this early on, to some extent he's answered it, but I'll ask him to answer it again. But writing, I think all academics know that writing is actually, it's hard, it's not easy. I think academics who claim that writing is easy, they must be very, very gifted. I certainly haven't found it easy. I find journal article writing, book writing hard, at times very hard, but at the end of it, which is probably why we do it, apart from you know, our careers and our pay packet or whatever, at the end of it, you do get a huge sense of satisfaction, you know, when it's over, when you've finished. And my question really is, what is blog writing like? How long does it take you? Is it hard in the same way, or is it easy? Does it give you the same levels of satisfaction? And particularly, I think people here will probably be interested in how long does it take you? If you're going to, you've spoken about these blogs, you submitted the blogs, you've had them published, we've seen them, they're really good. But actually, how much time is this taking you? Because I'm sure everybody in this room is extremely busy. They have multiple commitments, yeah? And many may be thinking, well, the blog is for, that I'm going to put it in my in tray, towards the bottom. It's that thing that I will get to it. It's a sort of bonus activity, isn't it? I'll get there. So that's not really the answer. And this is why perhaps many people don't write blogs who should be blogging. So I suppose my question here is, do you find it hard? Do you get the same levels of satisfaction as we do with other types of writing? And really, in terms of hardness, how long, does a blog take you? I realize it's a bit like how long's a piece of string, because each blog will be different. But on average, how much of your life is taken out by writing a blog? Rory, let's come to you first this time.
To answer that, I would say it's differed over time. So when I first started writing these kind of blog articles, it could take about a week. That time has cut down a lot since, as practice has made me better at writing, and also as I build up a bank of ideas which are kind of all ready to go once the event comes that I can hook them to. At the moment, with that bank and that practice, it takes me maybe a day to a day and a half to write a blog post. And then the editing normally, to be honest, it takes maybe half an afternoon. And just to link that to what you were saying about, putting it into your, your to-do list and people putting it after the other publications, I actually encourage people to do this first, because it's something that can get your thought juices going, and it's something you can do really quickly. So I'd say rather than putting it to the end, do this first, because you can write a pitch quickly, you can write the blog post in a couple of days and a half, and it can give you the energy to then go and write something longer. So I'd say put it first. And in relation to that, satisfaction, I actually find at times writing these can be more satisfactory than writing academic articles, because I find sometimes you publish your academic article, especially if you tell people outside academia, oh, I've written this, they'll go, okay, but they'll never read it. But when it's something short and very relevant to something that's currently going on, they will read it straight away, and they'll get back, and especially non-academic people get back and, oh, I really like this idea and things, or I really enjoyed this, in a way they wouldn't with longer papers. So whilst peer review can be satisfactory for CV building and things like that, I find blog posts are satisfactory for that as well, but also for that general engagement, they can be even more satisfactory.
Thank you very much, Rory. And Hager.
I mean, just to harp on the fact that writing is hard, yeah, it definitely is. And something I've learned in journalism, something that my editors used to tell me, is that writing is more like a sport. You have to practice to get better, and you have to, and that was the part that my editors used to stress, you have to keep doing it to stay good at it. And it's definitely something I second. It's not really inspiration that strikes and gives you good text. It really is practice. It's like jogging, just very different than jogging. As to how long a blog post takes me, it depends. I would say a couple of days to a week, depending on what I'm writing about. And I've noticed that the more passionate I am about a topic, the longer or the harder the writing can sometimes be, because the more passionate you are, the more you know about a topic, the more you want to say, and the more you will try to say. And 1,000 words are deceptively short. So the longest battle that I have in my writing process will actually be getting it down to 1,000. I start out and think, oh, well, I'm eyes on the target. It's really good. And then I ended up with 1,200. And then less it is just over the word limit, the harder I find it to just fit it back in. So that's something I still have to consider, especially with topics that I'm very passionate about. Like currently I have one piece in production. It's about civilian control, which is my dissertation topic. And that was very hard to kind of reduce to a blog post because I'm very passionate about this topic and I had a lot to say, a lot to dunk on in the literature. And I just had to choose one, and I chose Huntington to dunk on in the literature. But other pieces take a couple of days. I'm usually very diligent with the background research that I do, especially when topics need a bit of a prelude and information. I find that finding an open source and open access reference takes surprisingly a lot of time. So whenever I want to substantiate an argument, I've also had that with the civilian control blog piece, finding just an open access source that references the point that you make, something that you already know from your research can be hard. So for example, I had to substantiate the point that the general conscription in France changed societal structures. It's something I know from having read the literature, but finding that one open access resource that says exactly that point for you to substantiate when you read my blog post, that was hard. No, that was a surprising obstacle. But yeah, it does get better the more mileage you have. But like I said, be aware of the topics you're most passionate about in this.
Thanks, Hager. Yes, those the hardest bit is cutting out those precious qualifications and phrases to get it to 1,000. Kate said we don't accept anything over 1,000 words. We set out our stall early on with the loop that if you can't say it in 1,000 words, then it's not worth saying, at least not on the loop. Excuse me. We sometimes allow a few words over, but only in terms of submission, and then the editors, we edit it down. Nothing goes to production unless it is on 1,000 or under. Two final quick questions to you, really, which kind of brings things together. First, what is your best advice to those who are considering writing a blog piece in some? Hager.
Well, it is something that will build your confidence, and it is something that will help you in your research. So I can really only recommend going at it, trying the blog post. And you'll really only know when you start trying for a blog post, because in many cases, and Ruairidh has mentioned that as well, writing helps the thought process. So sometimes if you want to pilot a research idea that you're not sure, you want to commit a whole research paper to, write a blog post on it, something you've seen in your general research, in your thesis, in your dissertation, that you thought was interesting, but you also don't want to dedicate a full journal paper to, write a blog post. You saw something in the news that kind of sparked a certain question for you, go ahead, write a blog post. It really is just get started with it. And for that, I like to return to the loop as well, because the editorial process is so streamlined. So you actually will get a lot of good feedback on it. And based on that feedback, you can improve your writing. So for those of you who have never submitted, you will get to the production interface that has a very nifty readability software that will tell you how readable is your text, how optimized is it for search engines. And that's a lot of, and also, the editor's feedback is very transparent, I think, in what they mark, what they shorten. And that's a lot more than what you would get in other outlets, who will just tell you like it's a good piece or it's not a good piece, and who will just mark what you should change and not always elaborate what is wrong with the piece or why you should do that. So yeah, get started here, learn from it, and take it with you to your own research and to your own writing, because that's certainly what I've been doing over the years, and it certainly helped me improve my writing as well. Not very deep advice, but really get started.
No, thank you, Hager, and thanks for the plug for the loop. We didn't really ask for that. Ruairidh, please.
I think my advice may echo here, but I would also say the main thing I would say is don't sit on an idea, always send it out. The only way it's not going to be accepted is if you don't submit it. So don't kind of put it to your back of your drawer and get it out there. And the other thing I would say as well, and this is echoing again, is how great the experience with a loop can be in increasing your writing style. As I say, my writing, I can see it increasing so much after having worked with the loop, and a lot of it as well is seeing how great a job the editors do at enhancing my own writing and improving it and making my ideas clearer, and how that's kind of informed my practice as well. So yeah, again, don't just sit on the idea, get it out there.
Thanks. And actually, you've both answered the other question in doing that, because my other question was really to sum up why write a blog, but I think you've both answered that in there. So thank you very much indeed, both of you, for answering those questions so eloquently. And that completes our sort of half hour in terms of our questions to them.
No, because usually my approach is, and I know this from experience now, it's sometimes very daunting to just answer or write something about like just a big topic, and it's always easier to answer a question, like I said, you know, starting with a question. And what I've really been doing so far is I literally look at authors who research authoritarianism. I write to them with a question like, yo, I have this question, humor me for a second. Would you be interested to write a blog post on it? And usually the question gets them started on something. So there's a blog post everywhere.
Well, I hope everybody's gained something from the presentations and the interview with our two of our bloggers, our leading bloggers here. Really, if you are thinking about writing a blog, but you're really not quite sure, do not hesitate. You don't have to submit a pitch to the blog site immediately. You can contact any member of the editorial team, and we're happy to engage with you. And I'm sure even Ruairidh and Hager will be willing to offer you some advice. You've all got it in you. If you haven't written a blog before, if you've written for publication, you can write a blog. It's a different sort of process, but as Ruairidh and Hager have indicated, it's hugely satisfying. It's very enjoyable, and very well worth doing.